My name is Amaras and I'm a 12th grade student, and this is my capstone video. I want to start off this video by reflecting on my experience from kindergarten to grade 12 and some of the moments that really shaped me as a person. I would describe myself as a person who's very driven to do well and can push through adversity. One way that I was shaped to be like this was being diagnosed with 3 learning challenges in the 4th grade. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, which is a learning challenge on understanding word composition. Words will switch, flip around, move around the page, and it makes reading very challenging. And then I was diagnosed with dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is probably the learning challenge that has affected me the most as I go into my future years of school, and it is trouble solidifying what I want to write onto a piece of paper and organizing my ideas into a proper channel. And then dyscalculia, which is a problem with understanding math concepts. These learning challenges taught me to really be confident in myself and understand that my process is going to be so much different than the people around me. I spent a lot of my years in elementary school not understanding why I was taken to a separate classroom once a week and no one else was. And there was a lot of misunderstanding between the students around me. They thought that I was dumb, and I also thought that I was dumb. Comments were always made on, why are you moved? Why do you get more time? Etc. And that was really hard, and it caused a bit of a challenge between me to make relationships with students in school because there was such a big gap between us, and that gap was never talked about. Teachers didn't speak about that in school, and that was really hard being around people who didn't understand me. My next experience within elementary school that shaped me as a person and my relationships in life was sports. From a very, very early age, I was put into multiple different sports, and that started with swim lessons and soccer. My swim lessons, as I grew as a person, understood water safety, I really became in love with the idea of helping other people feel comfortable in the water and how important it was. I also grew up with a mother who didn't know how to swim. She never took swimming lessons as a kid, and I started to see that really important gap that was in my community. A lot of people didn't like swimming lessons. A lot of kids around me were really uncomfortable in the water. Parents were really nervous. This experience in swimming lessons actually led me to my current job now, which is a lifeguard and a swim instructor at the pool that I learned how to do swimming lessons at. I feel a lot of fulfillment, teamwork, collaboration, and a lot of growth on empathy towards students when I don't understand why they're afraid of water, and it's really helped me grow as a person. I've been teaching for 3 years now, and it's just really grown my understanding of the people around me and my collaboration with people who I'm trying to take authority over. It also really built my leadership abilities. And my work helping people, all the lifeguarding courses and first aid courses have gotten me into the University of Victoria, where I'll be spending my next year studying kinesiology, which is sports medicine and movement. Another way that I worked on my team-making collaboration was soccer. It took a lot for me to, as a kid, I was very bossy and very controlling, and being on a collaborative team so young really helped me switch those bossiness into leadership and be in a position of power around people without making them feel like they're being suppressed. And it actually led me to captaining my volleyball team. Out of the 4 volleyball teams I've played on, I've captained 3 of them, 2 being school teams, 1 being a club team. This is me playing volleyball. Volleyball was a really big love for me. It really got out of my energy, helped me focus as a student with learning challenges. Exercise can really help us decompress, move on from what's going on around us, and focus in and get all that excess energy out. I think one big thing that is really talked about between students is the jump that they feel between 7th grade and 8th grade. They feel unprepared and unready, and the environment is just completely different. And as a student with learning challenges, you could have multiplied that by 10 for me. Every single math and English class that I took in elementary school was run through with other teachers. It was super slow. It was super collaborative. And then you get into high school and it's like fast, fast, fast. That was really, really hard. But I had a lot of determination to do well, and I wasn't going to let my learning challenge stop me. And that's one thing in my learning journey that really made me believe in myself as I go into post-secondary, that I can do anything. Because in my high school career, I ended up taking one of the hardest maths you can take, which is pre-calculus 11 and pre-calculus 12. And I studied every single night, 4 hours that whole semester, every single day, doing every single question. I spent almost all my lunches in that math room with that teacher who helped me. And that was a shaping experience. and seeing the results that I ended up getting, working so hard, and then having to reap that reward when I got an 86 in grade 11 and an 89 in grade 12 was so phenomenal. I felt amazing within myself, and I was so proud of myself. But advocating for myself as a student with learning challenges really gave me a voice, and I really feel like as I go into my future, I'm prepared to stand up for myself, stand up for what's right, and stand up for what I need. So as all of my hard work came in grades through all my years, I learned a lot of great ways to study, and I felt like I was 100% going to be able to share those ways with other students who needed to know how to study, how to take a break, how to push through struggle, how to build motivation. So that's going to lead into what my capstone project ended up being. But it was really rewarding seeing all my hard work and all the extra effort. And though it was frustrating having to do twice the work that the student beside me was doing for the same grade, I felt confident in myself that as I go into university, which, like I said, I got into the University of Victoria for kinesiology, which are my post-secondary plans. And after that, I'm hoping to specialize into physiotherapy at no specific university yet, but right now the specialized plan after my bachelor's is physiotherapy. I feel ready. I feel like a lot of students who are neurotypical kind of breeze through high school. For a lot of people, it's really easy. They understand the concepts fast. They only need to study like an hour. And when they go into university, they struggle so hard because they're not used to studying. And I already feel like I'm there. I feel like I know how to study. I feel like I know how to work for what I need. And I think I've really set myself up in my high school years for university. And I think that's one big accomplishment. Another really big accomplishment I'm proud of, like I said, is I'm a lifeguard. Those courses are really hard. And when I was 15, I did all of them. And I never did swim club as a kid. So I've competed against swimmers that were a lot stronger than me. And this is a really big thing that I'm proud of. It showed, again, perseverance and that I can do anything that I've set my mind to. Another accomplishment that I'm proud of that builds on my leadership is in soccer. 3 years in a row, I won my club's for my team Hustle and Hard Award, which shows hard work, good effort, good participation, and good leadership and collaboration with teammates, which was it was a big accomplishment for me. As I went through high school, a lot of my core competencies were really developed. Like I talked about many times previously in this video, my communication with my peers was really struggling, and I was very insecure with myself and my learning. And as I went into high school, like I said, I had some teachers that weren't necessarily open to upholding my IEP because it was an inconvenience. It was a bit more effort from them. And I really communicated why that was such an important document and why that would not be happening and that my IEP would be upheld, which was really important for me to communicate my needs to others and what was important in a calm, respectful way to avoid conflict. Another thing that really worked out was my communication with the people around me. I did a lot of working on myself. Another way that I grew my communication was through my capstone. Within my capstone, I had to do a lot of talking to people who were in similar experiences with me, trying to get their experience, making them feel comfortable in these conversations, and letting them know that I was someone that they could communicate with and that I would take their story and I would communicate it to other people really well and take what they were saying and post it to my capstone account and help other people grow from their stories without misinterpreting them. I really grew my social responsibility through volunteering. I did a lot of volunteering in my early years of high school. And then my capstone was a lot to do with helping the community and the people around me and people who have been through stuff like me, and also people who I've never experienced anything like theirs, and really putting myself in their shoes and understanding where they came from, as that was a perspective I never would have gotten before this. In my first years of high school, I worked on my thinking when I took art classes. I worked on my creative thinking by putting pieces together. And then later on in high school, I continued to grow that with different classes as I took theater, which is a very good creative art. I had to think about the way I acted, the way I moved as that character and how that character would move. And another way of my creative thinking was I took photography. I ended up getting a really high 97 in that class as I really enjoyed editing the photos to my liking, looking at the different perspectives creatively, taking pictures at different angles. And then eventually I went into my last 2 years of grade 11 and grade 12. And my most creative thinking was probably with my English. That goes into my personal and social aspect of my learning competencies. I learned a lot about myself talking and interacting with others. I think, especially with my capstone, hearing other people's stories and other people's experiences through high school and how it feels to not understand or how it feels to get it right away, I grew my understanding of who I was as a person and how I wanted to behave by talking to these other people. All of my core competencies were grown through my capstone project. As my capstone project, let me introduce it now, was an Instagram account for students with learning challenges to give them tips based off my experiences. So this is my capstone project. You can see I made lots of posts, and there was a lot of different types of posts on here. We'll get deeper into that in the corner over here. This is my introduction page. Here I talked about my experience and my credentials and why I was doing this for other students. So that was my first post. Now that I've introduced and connected some core competencies to my high school journey and to my capstone, I want to talk about the whole reason that we're here and why I loved Careers 12 so much was because my capstone. So, as I said, my capstone was an Instagram account for students with learning challenges. My bio was Amaras Capstone, focused on sharing tips for success and motivation through the learning challenges community and other students. The main reason that this was so important to me as a project was I wanted to build a community, and as I started posting, I really did. People were in my comments. I had lots of followers. I made flyers that I showed on my journal, my capstone journal, of, hey, this is my Instagram account. Like, if you have struggles, if your child has struggles, follow along and you can understand a little bit more about them. And I really learned a lot more about other people and not just myself. I got to communicate my learning challenges, but I also got to talk about things that I'd never touched on before. So one really big thing that was out of my comfort zone but was really interesting to research was the autism food cycle. All of my posts had deep, extensive research into different sources, different people. I talked to people, the real source, the people who have learning challenges. And I also asked people, hey, like, what are you looking for when I'm posting on my account? What's a good post that you might want to see? And then I also made some posts that I really would have wanted to see as I went through with my learning challenges through my whole career. And now the capstone project is to be connected into your post-secondary education. And though I'm not going into specialized ed for students with learning challenges, as I said, I'm going into kinesiology. This project was really important to me because I learned so much about more tips and ways to help people around me and myself as I go into a new environment that's going to be a lot more course heavy, a lot harder to study in. And so I wanted to just go through some posts that I made. So one of my first posts was, let's talk about stress. This post was really important because I talked about some ways to reduce our stress and why students feel stressed out, how more students are calm. How more students who are neurotypical can be more calm than students who are neurodivergent because they have learning anxiety. One of my favorite posts out of this whole account was a post talking about learning anxiety and how I beat learning anxiety on my tests in 9th grade when I realized I don't have to struggle so much if I find it, and it was routine. Routine is something that's so important with students with learning challenges. So I show a little tin in my post that I keep. This tin has 2 earplugs because sound is really hard, and sometimes students are really embarrassed by the sensory headphones, so tiny little earplugs work just as well. They're a lot more discreet, not that we should care what other people think, but that can take away some of the anxiety of, oh my god, everyone's looking at me, everyone's worried about what I'm doing, everyone's like, why is she taking so much longer, why is she so slow, why is she so confused? And next thing in my tin was some essential oils that I put on my nose to help me calm down, and then a lucky dime and some Vaseline and a hair tie. I just put Vaseline on, put my hair back, put my earplugs in, and that's my routine. I did it every single test to help with nerves. I have a playlist that's all music with no words so that I didn't feel overwhelmed or stimulated. I was getting amped up as I got into a test because I was already going to be like, and I got so much positive feedback. I think that post had 20 comments from parents and students getting like, oh my gosh, important, and how people could channel that. Another post that was really, really important to me was a post where I asked students to talk about their learning insecurities. So I think I had 3 adults talk about what it was like being a neurodivergent student, and then a bunch of other students with learning challenges as well who were just like me, and they told their story about this. And then I talked about 2 experiences that I had with teachers. When I was in elementary school, a 4th grade LST teacher took a letter that I wrote from my best friend and she saw that the dear on the letter, I had written dear, comma, Kayla, instead dear Kayla, comma, and she took it and ripped it in half. That experience was really hard as a 4th grade student, not knowing how to stand up to a teacher, but I did. And I would love for you to read these 2 experiences just so you can understand what it's like and how I communicated that into posts. And then I shared the experience with my 11th grade math teacher and how he was really rude to me, how he was not upholding my IEP, and how there was conversations with principals and parents. And I just talked about that experience and how you can push through and understand that teacher's perspective, that this isn't something that they've dealt with before, and so it's hard to comprehend. And it's okay to have a conflict with a person and be completely fine later and take their class again. Okay, so I made some relatable posts, some posts with some funny memes. I'll put some of them up here so you can see them. What I learned from this capstone was how to reflect within myself on how my experiences might help other people with their experiences and how to put that into information for other people. I also learned how to put myself in other students' shoes in situations like autism, which is something I've never experienced myself, but doing research and communicating with other people and learning all about that. I also learned new ways for me to grow as I go into post-secondary. I would love to continue this account, and that's probably my next steps for this project, is to continue making more posts as I learn more about the learning journey in university and continue to post-secondary.